Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. Last week we talked about the Grimm's fairy tale Iron Hans, which is an archetype of male development from boyhood to manhood, and the importance of the wild man in the development of masculinity, and how the boy's development is dependent on embracing and befriending and incorporating and integrating the wild masculine nature that is himself, and that this is what the archetype of the wild man represents. And today we're talking about the female equivalent, my absolute favorite Grimm's fairy tale, and the name of the story is One Eye, Two Eyes, Three Eyes. And the story goes that there was a woman, she had 3 daughters, as usual, and the oldest had 1 eye, the middle daughter had 2 eyes, and the youngest daughter had 3 eyes. And the woman and her 2 abnormal daughters mistreated 2 eyes because she looked like everyone else. So it's basically the beginning of every Grimm's fairy tale, the detail that covers female development from childhood to adulthood. There's an abusive mother, there's the mistreating sisters who get all the privileges, and the main character who is the mistreated outsider. That's the way it starts. 2 Eyes was not given enough food. She was beaten, she was made to sleep on the floor or even outside. She was made to do all the hard work around the house, and she was also made to herd the goat out into the pasture to graze, which was where this family got their food, and that was one of her many tasks. And the story goes that one day she was out in the fields tending the goat while it grazed, and she started crying over her misfortune and how bad her life was, how hungry she was. And an old woman, also a regular feature of Grimm's fairy tales, especially when they're detailing female development, the old woman comes along, asks the girl why she's crying. The girl explains the situation, and the old woman says, all you have to do is ask the goat. Just ask the goat for whatever you want, and then you'll get it. The old woman leaves. The girl thinks it's nonsense, but she has nothing to lose, so she tries it. She begs the goat to give her something to eat, and the goat magically produces an enormous spread of food with all kinds of delicacies the girl could ever ask for. And she eats her fill, and she goes home satisfied, and it doesn't bother her so much when her mother and her sisters eat all the food and leave her with nothing. And this goes on for a while, and the mother and the other sisters notice that 2 Eyes is not as depressed as she was, she's not as hungry as she was, she's not failing in her health. So the mother sends 1 Eye to follow 2 Eyes out into the field and sees what she's doing. Sees her ask the goat to give her something to eat. The goat gives her all this food, and 1 Eye goes home and tells her mother what's happening. And when 2 Eyes gets back to the house, the mother kills the goat, takes it out into the courtyard and slaughters it, and leaves it there. And 2 Eyes is heartbroken because all her hopes are dashed. And she runs out into the fields and is crying alone. The old woman comes back and asks what the problem is, and she tells 2 Eyes to take the skin of the goat and bury it in the garden. And so 2 Eyes goes home. She begs her mother for the skin of the goat, nothing else, nothing that she could possibly use for food, and the mother doesn't see any reason not to, so she lets her have it. 2 Eyes buries the skin. The next morning, a magnificent pear tree had grown in the garden where the skin was buried. And the mother and the sisters were delighted. They ran outside. The tree was loaded with pears, and they tried to climb up on ladders and on the branches to get to the pears, and the tree would constantly move its branches out of the way, so they couldn't get to the fruit. But when Two Eyes tried it, the tree would move its branches closer to her, would lower them to the ground so that she could pick the fruit easily. So the mother got Two Eyes to pick the fruit for them, but wouldn't let her have any of it. The mother and the other two sisters took all the pears and left her with nothing. So this went on for a few days, and one day while they were out there and Two Eyes was getting the pears, a prince in his magnificent coach rode past the house and saw the beautiful pear tree, and he stopped and asked the mother for some of the pears, and the same thing happened. She and the other two sisters tried to brown nose the prince by getting the pears themselves, and it didn't work, and they had to ask Two Eyes to get the pears, and she was the one who gave them to the prince, and they had an instant connection, and the prince took Two Eyes with him back to the palace and made her his queen. But she still longed for the pear tree. And she woke up the morning after her wedding and looked out the window, and there was the pear tree growing in the palace courtyard. So the meaning behind this story, if you think about the symbolism of the different elements of the story, you can track back. The pear tree represents the girl's gifts and talents and the things that she's naturally good at. And she has to go through a process to embrace them and find them and go through hardship before she can get to them. And the mother and the sister try to take advantage of that. They try to steal the gifts and capitalize on them for themselves, but it doesn't work. The gifts don't work if somebody else uses them. Only the person who that they belong to is able to use them and profit by them. And the gifts go with you wherever you go. Once you've actually realized these gifts and learned how to utilize them, you can go anywhere. You can go away from the people that have mistreated you. You can go away from your family. You can go away from the people who think they know who you are. And your gifts go with you. And they continue to bear fruit, both literally and figuratively, no matter where you go. So going back through the story, as I've mentioned elsewhere on the blog, in almost all of these incredibly ancient stories, the girl's mother is one of the biggest, if not the most serious antagonist to the girl's development. The girl has to make an enemy of her mother, at least figuratively or partially, in order to break free. This is the symbolism of the abusive mother in almost all of the Grimm's fairy tales. Doesn't matter what the mother acts like in real life. Symbolically, archetypally, the mother stands in the way of the girl developing into a woman in her own right, and the girl has to overcome that obstacle by becoming an antagonist to the mother. And the stories about the evil mother, the abusive mother and sisters are not necessarily a comment on what a mother might actually do, or what any particular mother, how any particular mother acts. How they act and how they behave and how they treat the girl in real life is not what the story is about. It's about the fact that the girl has to break out of family expectations, the identity that she's built up around herself, within the family, as a member of that family, and her relation to all the other members of the family, that is the prison that the girl has to break out of. And the process of development is getting away from all of that and escaping it. And of course, the archetype of the crone, the old woman who helps the girl and gives her information and uses magic to facilitate the girl escaping, is also not a real person. It's an archetype within the girl's psyche. It's either an archetype for the person that the girl will become later, or it's her idealized version of what the adult female is. Once the girl goes through the entire process of adulthood and motherhood and growth and development and aging, she will become the crone. She will know all of the secret knowledge of development that the girl doesn't know now. And it's that inner knowing that speaks to the girl and guides her and shows her what she needs to do to tap into all of these resources that she already has and gifts that are already lying dormant within herself. And the goat is the first truncated example of that. The goat represents the earth and the girl's primal nature that she's bringing with her from childhood. It's not the full development of the gifts that are going to bear fruit. It's an intermediate stage. It's a connection between the earth and the pear tree. It's a living being, and it does produce sustenance. The goat produces milk in real life, and in the story it produces food that keeps her going. It's not the ultimate realization, it's a bridge. That's one step between where she was and where she's going, and that has to die. It's usually killed off by the expectations of the past, and the girl has to take the remnant, the dead carcass of that intermediate stage, and from that grows the gifts that are going to later get her through life. So I hope everybody enjoyed that. Just a little detour into some of the stories that make up our society and our psyche. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next week.